Welcome back to Son of Chelsea. Daniel Childs here. It's my team selector and preview ahead of tomorrow night's game at Stamford Bridge against Wolves in the Premier League. A huge game for Chelsea. They kind of all feel quite huge at the moment, given the nature of the mood, our lack of wins since the Brentford game, which is, I think, basically a month now, isn't it? So this is a huge game. In some ways, looking at the results, because we're playing on a Monday, you get to see the whole Premier League weekend or nearly all of it. And of course, Newcastle were heavily beaten in the end by Bournemouth. So in some ways, that result has gone for us. But of course, there are major concerns about this game in particular from an injury point of view that we're going to get into. Are some of the key players that were doubted on Friday during that press conference, have they recovered? Are they ready for the game? Or is it a situation where even if they're not 100%, Maresca kind of feels like he has to play and risk some of those players because he does need a result? Chelsea need to start winning games again pretty quickly. Let me know your thoughts ahead of this game and everything we talk about in this preview. We'll obviously look at those press conference quotes. We'll look at Wolves, how they've been doing recently, and also, of course, giving you my lineup. Please like, subscribe. If you're watching on YouTube, thank you as well for tuning in. Please subscribe and comment and share the video around. If you're listening on the podcast feed, please do give us a positive rating review if you're enjoying the show. And of course, aiming to do some live content on Big Up moving forward as well. Maybe a few watch-alongs as well. We'll see what's going on. So I'll let you know ahead of time if I'm going to be doing any watch-alongs on Big Up along with other content that I'm planning to produce this year. But let's go back to Friday. It's a bit weird because, again, it's a Monday night game. So I'm doing my team selector on a Friday, but this time we're doing it on a Sunday. And in Friday's press conference, the mood was very negative, and unsurprisingly so. I reacted to some of the quotes Maresca gave, primarily when he was asked directly about the January transfer window, which you can go and see. We spoke about Garnacho, we spoke about Maresca calling it a disaster, but this is more about this game. So he said, Cole Palmer is a doubt. He was not in the session today. That was Friday. Levi was not in the session. Romeo, Lavia, and Enzo were not involved. Cole didn't train today. We don't know if he will train in the 2 days. So obviously, there's been a bit of time since. I'm sure we will get some form of an update, but we may just have to wait till kickoff, or at least an hour or so before kickoff to know if these players are available. Cole Palmer is one where if he has a knock we've seen before, he will be played. I think he just will be played because he's the only one really scoring goals at the moment for Chelsea. And in a game of this nature, I think Maresca will risk playing him. Romeo Lavia, though, it's another case of Romeo Lavia, Reece James. I kind of look at these players where I don't know how you try and use them, because I think that they've given them 45 minutes. They've tried to ease them back into football. And then Romeo Lavia looked pretty fit. He looked pretty ready to go against Bournemouth. I thought he was playing pretty well in that game until he was taken off. And then he's got, an injury concern again. And that is I almost think, unwinnable, or kind of just the paradox of the situation, because you can have a go at the coaching staff, you can have a go at the club, you can have a go at maybe playing them or overexerting them too much. But a bit like Reece James, what do you limit these players to, like 20-minute cameos? And it's why many people this month are calling for either Andre Santos or Leslie Ugochukwu to be recalled, because Enzo Fernandez, Romeo Lavia, that effectively leaves Moises Caicedo. And in a worst case scenario where neither of those are available, I think it's very interesting to see who Maresca picks out of his depth options that he has in a midfield, because he might field Renato Vega there. He may even do the shock of the century and give a remontada to Kiernan Dewsbury-Hill. I think it's very, very unlikely. But it just shows you the lack of depth and quality options or reliable options if Enzo and Caicedo potentially aren't ready for a game. He was also asked about the home form, and I thought these were quite interesting quotes. So he said, for sure, we need to improve to win games. We need to win games at home because we need our people, our fans with us. They can see the effort every game, but for sure at the end of the game, when we win, we are more happy. When we play away against teams that sit back, when we play away, we are probably more calm. We don't play with rush, but when we're at home, we want to play quick. This is a mistake against teams that sit back. And it's an interesting point from Maresca, because I've seen him like vocally and kind of in an animated fashion when I've been at Chelsea games, because these are the things you don't see if you're watching on TV. But if you're at the game and I'm able from my East upper seat to look down and see him kind of direct to certain players. And I've noticed it strikingly against Fulham in that second half. There were multiple times when Chelsea could have maybe sprung a counter, looked to run into space to maybe exploit Fulham when the game was turning, and Maresca very visibly telling players to calm down. And I'm not entirely sure that's working in Chelsea's favour. I think game state and flexibility is a big part of the modern Premier League. And I think, it's interesting watching the success of Bournemouth and Forest this year. These are two teams that don't have a lot of the ball, but are very effective when they get it. And I just feel that Chelsea look at their best. They look at their most clinical. They look at their most devastating when they are using the speed in transition. There are a few times I watched this Chelsea team where I don't, in my head, when I think of their best moments, I don't think of these nice, neat, crafted passing moves where it takes about 1,000 passes for us to get into the perfect position to score a goal. It is nice passing combinations, but it's mainly, maybe from a deeper position, looking to quickly spring on the counter. And I understand what he means is like, there should be an element of control, but not to a point of suffocating us where there are opportunities to maybe run into space against a well-organised defence and you aren't taking it because you're fearful that ball's going to be lost. I'm not entirely sure that's the best strategy. Maybe you guys disagree. In terms of Wolves, Chelsea, there's kind of no excuse. Chelsea should be winning this game because Wolves have been pretty poor this year. Even after the change in head coach, Vitor Pereira came in. They got some decent results. They got a draw away at Spurs. They beat Man United at home. The performances maybe have improved a little bit, but they're 20th in the league for goals conceded. So they are the worst defence in the Premier League for goals conceded per match. So they are being heavily beaten. They were heavily beaten by Newcastle for comparison last week in midweek. So Chelsea really should be aiming to win this game comfortably. And I've even seen people, maybe from an outside perspective, saying they kind of see a heavy Chelsea win here because there is a reality that Chelsea have as well. If you look at their recent performances or just a run of games where we failed to win, we've created good opportunities in those games. I will maintain that. I think it'd be unfair of me, and I think it'd just be flippant to say Chelsea aren't creating anything and we're so rubbish in attack. That's not really the point. Every game we've kind of been speaking that our finishing, mainly through Nicholas Jackson, has been an issue. So I'd be foolish. We'd just be denying reality if we said that we weren't creating opportunities. Enzo Fernandez created a bundle of opportunities for Chelsea the other night. It's been that execution. So you kind of think, and I can understand if Maresca's mindset and my mindset would be, because I've seen it a lot of times, those things will rectify. We for a lot of last season, actually, we were creating good opportunities under Pochettino. And it took a long time, but eventually those opportunities paid off and Chelsea eventually started hitting upwards trajectory in terms of finishing their chances. Of course, confidence and mentality and players' own ability comes into that. It's not it's not robotic. Chelsea could suddenly really dip in terms of form and players' execution has dipped, but I think obviously there's more to it than that. I do think Wolves possess some threat. I think undeniably Matthias Cunha, who's been linked away this month, has been a brilliant player for them this season. Strand Larson can be quite an effective centre forward. Hwang too went through a nice goal streak last year. Technically, and of course Out Nori I think kind of stands out as their star player even as a left back, but to be fair, we've seen at the Bridge someone like Robinson for Fulham get quite a lot of joy down that left flank as well. So they do, as most Premier League teams do now, possess some threat. I think for Chelsea it's a combination of those really silly errors, particularly after half time, and it's maintaining that intensity, because the first halves of Palace and Bournemouth were enough to win the game. But a game isn't played in 45 minutes. A game is played in 90 plus minutes. And you can't always rely that the game is going to be out of sight by 45 minutes. Maybe it could be on Monday, given the quality of opposition. And if Chelsea rectify and turn around that finishing, it may well be. However, I still think there are major questions about this team's inability to control, really flagging at key points in the game. The physical side of this team is being questioned a lot over the past month. Especially, I think you've got to factor that in because that kind of relates to Maresca's inability to rotate, but also a lot was made about how Maresca had split two groups of players for the first half of the season, and load management was a big part of it. And it doesn't feel like that's really helping, especially as injury concerns are maybe starting to pile up a bit. But let's move on to my starting lineup. I do think there will be some changes. I think most of the changes actually are going to come further back in the team in sort of defence rather than in attack, which may disappoint some people. However, I just look at what Maresca does with his team and the way he's acted, and I'm just not seeing a lot of evidence at the moment he's going to radically shift. And unfortunately, I think that may cost him in the long run. But I'm just going to give you my honest take on this. I think that he, in a lot of ways, will stick to what he's doing and will go with the rationale that it will turn around eventually. Now, that may be naive thinking from his part. It may well be. Chelsea may continue to have the same flaws over and over again, and that may end up costing him his job. However, I think that there's another side to this, that we have talented players. For a period in the first half of the season, we showed that we could go on runs of good wins, and we could score quite a few goals when our players were in form. That's the key thing, and maybe he feels that with time those players will click back into form and start scoring me goals again, especially if we continue to create chances at the rate we're doing so. Rob Sanchez will start in goal. The back four is where I think the most change is going to come. I think Reece James will start this game. I don't think he'll survive the entirety of it. I think he didn't look that fit to me on Tuesday against Bournemouth. I know he scored a brilliant free kick that saved us from losing. However, he still looks... Someone was saying to me who was actually at the game, he looks maybe a little bit fearful or just a little bit tepid on running. I've heard it from a few people who watched that. I wasn't actually at the Bournemouth game. I'll be there tomorrow, but who said watching him live, he didn't look like he was running that well. So maybe there's something to that. But I just feel Reece is at a point, especially with what he did, momentum of him as a player. I think he'll start this game, and maybe he'll last about 50, 60 minutes. Trev Chalobah, wonderful to be sitting at the bar with Trevor Chalobah. I think that it'd just be lovely to see Trev's name back. It's great to have finally some proper defensive cover, and it's a little bit harsh on Josh Achimpong, but if you are taking off Reece James, the first name for me that would come to mind off the bench for Reece James is Josh Achimpong in his more natural position. And there are quite a few games coming up as well. So I just think Trev will come back in because, if you've brought him back on the promise that he's going to start games, he needs to be starting games and he needs to be doing it pretty quickly. And I think he will partner Levi, Colwill, obviously, and Mark Cucurella, who, of course, was a big part of the last game and should have seen basically an assault on him turn into a red card. Let's hope we don't have similar frustrations. I'm hoping that Enzo's ready and he can partner Moises Caicedo. I suspect that out of the two, he's probably less likely to risk Romeo Lavia than he is Enzo Fernandez. So I go Enzo Caicedo, but I much prefer to be in a position where if Enzo ain't ready, there could be someone you could turn to, obviously. But yeah, sure, Kieran Dewsbury is there, or at least maybe he's had a knock in recent weeks. Azari Cassidy is arguably there. You can kind of shift it round, but maybe you push someone from an attacking point into a more defensive position. But this is an issue, right? It needs to be rectified because you can't be at such a slim, fragile moment where both Enzo and Caicedo effectively have to stay fit for this midfield to work. And I saw them flagging the other night, and I think it's a major concern. So they've got to be thinking about getting Santos or Ugochukwu back. From a profile point of view, maybe Ugochukwu is a bit more suitable for maybe a defensive mind in this area, especially if you're thinking about Caicedo. There's no one you can get that's exactly like Caicedo, because I think Caicedo has been all-round brilliant for Chelsea this season. That in itself is a concern. I'm going to start Noni Madueke. I had a debate with Louis on the Chelsea pod about this, and I just think Noni was actually quite good the other night. I thought that he responded really well. He cut inside against Kirkes, who's been a highly rated left-back. I think he made him look quite silly a number of times, like he wasn't there. He burst, going outside, cutting in. It felt like he was a bit more effective the other night. He seemed to have the bit between his teeth, which is great to see with Noni, and showing that as a winger he can be really devastating when he is in the right moment. And I just don't... Neto has done very little over the past month to really justify starting games more. I don't think the execution has been there. Yes, maybe you could argue his work rate has maintained. I don't see a work rate drop in Pedro Neto, but I think in execution, I think Noni looks more threatening to me. And of course, had a well of a time the last time he faced Wolves. Of course, this is hopefully he doesn't call the bridge crap, but he got himself a hat-trick last time he played Wolves, so let's hope he can have a similar effect. Obviously, Cole Palmer, I think if he's 60% fit, he's playing some of this game. Because at the moment, he's the one you trust. If a chance comes his way, he's going to take it. So I think Palmer will start. And I think Jadon Sancho too, on the left side of Chelsea's attack. A lot being said about who Chelsea could be going for in attack. More so left-sided attackers rather than a number 9, which I think is mad. But I think that Sancho still remains the outstanding candidate to play in this position. I just would prefer to see him take a few more shots. He's still, to me, like he'll do nice trickery. At times it feels a little bit like the Joao Felix thing, where you do the first part good, but then you get into the more important part and either the execution or decision is lacking. And we've seen him when he's taken shots this year, particularly at Spurs, they can be pretty clinical. So I'd like to see him take a few more efforts, especially if Wolves are going to come to the bridge, as we suspect, and sit pretty deep. Most people don't want Jackson to start, or at least are in a position now where they are screaming at the club, please get a striker. Yes, I'm in the same position right now. Unless he turns his mind around Maresca and Nkunku completely, I can't see anything other than Nicholas Jackson starting. I think he will stick with Jackson, and I think he will back the player that got him 9 goals in the first half of the season to finally rectify that and start scoring again. Because I can't see Mark Guiu starting a Premier League game. I mean, it'd be his first Premier League start. And Nkunku, yes, has started a couple games, but still, with all the rumours swirling around about him leaving, I just personally can't see it. We may completely be shocked. I'd be quite excited to see Nkunku start this game. Either, I think more so for me, in a role with alongside Palmer or kind of behind Nicholas Jackson rather than as the centre forward himself. But I'm just going off evidence. Like, what has, from a personnel, from a selection point of view, what has Maresca done for the majority of the season? He's gone for these type of players. Now we're over halfway into the season, and you've got to start making firmer judgments on. We have a long and a bigger sample size. This isn't only a few weeks. This is months now of evidence. So that's why I think Maresca will go with a team that I think some people may feel, in the attacking sense, isn't as changed as maybe they want. However, I think that's what he'll do. So those are my thoughts. I think this is a big game. I think it's one Chelsea need to win. I do think they will win it, actually. I'm going to be positive. I think Chelsea will have enough quality to get the job done because they really need to. And I think it will give some boost, hopefully get Chelsea back on form. It will get them back above Newcastle in the Premier League table. So there's something positive there. I think we have the chance to go 4 points behind Arsenal in second place. So it's not catastrophic, Chelsea's position, but it's one I keep on saying this as every week goes on, the longer it takes to get back on track, the harder it's going to be for the rest of the season. So those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below, and I will see you again very soon. All the best.